We're glad to bring in American Spectator columnist Jeffrey Lord. He's a former associate political director in the Reagan White House. Jeffrey, welcome, and gosh, what another Friday, a Friday surprise. Your take on all of this.
Hello there, Kirsten. Well, I mean, I had to laugh. I mean, good luck in getting these 13 Russians to come back to the country. When the president said that this was a hoax, that the idea that he had colluded with the Russians was the hoax, here we go. I mean, there were no Americans involved in this, that at least as I understand this, and I've been working my way through this indictment. What you've got here are Russians who wanted to meddle in U.S. elections and meddle in U.S. policy. Yeah, I am old enough, not quite to have been there at the time, but right before I was president on this earth, there was a gentleman by the name of Alger Hiss, who was a key advisor to Franklin Roosevelt at the Yalta Summit, a State Department guy, a Harvard Law graduate, etc. And he turned out to be, yes, indeed, a Soviet spy. The Russians have been at this for decades and decades and decades. All this is the latest New Deal here, and frankly, there's not much there.
Right. So take a listen to this other piece of sound from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein this afternoon.
Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election. I want to caution you that everyone charged with a crime is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in court.
Right, so the entire press conference seemed to be politically neutral. Of course, that didn't stop Democrats and Republicans both seizing on the information and saying that it supported their view. What is your opinion on whether or not this is going to be any less politicized after this press conference?
Oh, not a prayer. They will try and politicize this for all it's worth. But I have to say, Kirsten, I mean, at some point, they run out of gas with this. I mean, either the president like him or not like him, but whatever, the president is not stupid. There is no way in the world that he would be deliberately collaborating with Russians to steal a presidential election, because obviously at some point it would involve so many people that you'd get caught. I mean, if for no other reason. So what we're seeing here is this is in the process of being actually disproved. And the other side is going to go down hard. They're going to say the things that I've seen this afternoon where they pounce on the sentence in this indictment. You have to listen to Rod Rosenstein's voice. He didn't say in this indictment. He said in this indictment. They're trying to make it seem like there's more coming and they've got him. I just think that this is ridiculous, and they're starting to, suck air, as it were.
Right. So another interesting bit of information. Former Trump chief strategist Steve Bannon was interviewed by Mueller over multiple days this week. It's reported he spent a total of some 20 hours in conversations. What do you make of how Steve Bannon is playing into all of this?
Again, you can like or not like Steve Bannon. I know Steve Bannon. Stupid he's not. I just don't think that Steve Bannon or anybody else in the senior level of the Trump campaign would have set out to do something like this, because it would have been self-defeating. So, maybe he talked to people, as I read this indictment, that there were people in campaigns and they didn't know that these were Russians or Russian involved, et cetera, et cetera. I suppose that's always possible. But the fact that Steve Bannon was sitting there in Trump Tower plotting and planning with Russians, I think is unlikely.
Yeah. OK, so, how do we prevent this in the future? Right. That's obviously what we would hope that many of our lawmakers are concerned with now. The Washington Post is saying that Facebook acknowledged to Congress that the Internet Research Agency, again, that's one of that Russian entity, had bought 3,000 ads on its platform that reached about 11.4 million users. The agency's employees also reportedly made free posts that reached about 126 million users. So in addition to polarizing online political conversation, Facebook reported that this Internet Research Agency used Facebook pages, organizing 129 real-world events, so offline, that drew the attention, again, of 350,000 Facebook users. So how, with the mass amount of social media that we have and the access to so many different platforms, how in the world does Congress plan to address this issue so that this same kind of Russian influence, or from any other foreign government, happens in the future?
Yeah, Kirsten, that's a good question. I don't think Congress has remotely an idea. I certainly don't. And I think this is going to be tied in with the things that if you noticed, Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley billionaire, difficult to operate. I think that's going to be part of the discussion, too, as to whether Facebook and Google and these things are fixing the debate because all their staffers are so far left-leaning. I think this is all part and parcel of that same conversation. How they go about it, it will be very interesting to see.
Yeah, so fascinating. And I'm curious, as someone obviously who has followed this story since its birth, how far do you think we still have to go in the Mueller investigation until it's finally complete? The Trump administration has said hopefully at the beginning of this year. Others have suggested possibly longer. What's your take on the timeline?
Oh, I don't think it should be too much longer here. I mean, if we're seeing these stories about whether the president will talk to Mueller or whether he won't and all that, I think when you've reached that stage, you're starting to get to the beginning of the end here with this, whatever that end will be. But I don't, these things can drag on. I've certainly seen it. I was in the Reagan White House during Iran-Contra, and that special prosecutor thing seemed to go on forever. So it's possible, I suppose, but I think there is a need for haste here.